Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so very delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcasts, and a CastBox, Amazon Music, wherever you find your shows. Three wonderful guests will be joining us today. Monica Mancillas will be here to celebrate Sing It Like Celia. Eden Estabrook will be here to celebrate Arnie the Armadillo. And we'll also be taking a look back at a conversation we had with Kate DiCamillo, where she told us how her life was changed when she learned how to read.
You've heard the whispers. You've seen it on TV. You may have even seen the movie. Now it's time to bring Dungeons and Dragons directly to you with D&D for Hire!
More than just a game, D&D lets you step into the role of a hero you create and guide them on fantastical adventures with your friends. Perfect for beginners and experts alike, D&D for Hire is sure to delight and entertain your kids for weeks on end.
Such a fun game. There are endless possibilities. There's so many things that you can do. It's so much fun.
Our son Eli loves D&D. It's like his favorite thing to do all week.
I was like 15 when I joined. I'm 21 now. There are people who are in our party, really learn to come out of their shells.
Whether you're near or far, whether you're looking for a birthday party or a campaign to keep you adventuring for years to come, D&D for Hire has you covered. Learn more at dndforhire.com. That's dndforhire.com. D&D for Hire,
Bringing the adventure to you.
D&D for Hire runs games digitally over Zoom or in person in select areas.
This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Melusine, Birds of Many Feathers. Put down your iPads, young explorers. Have you ever wondered about the mysteries hidden in your own backyard? Join Melusine on an adventure to uncover a mysterious bird right in her backyard. Look, over there. What bird could that be? On every page, meet a diverse world filled with feathered friends and neighbors. This tale is perfect for young readers aged 5 to 10, and it's not your ordinary birding adventure, but a true appreciation of biodiversity. And you know what? The adventure doesn't stop there. Melusine, Bird of Many Feathers, is an ideal companion for the great Backyard Bird Count, which starts February 16th to 19th, 2024. Participate in this exciting event with families from around the world and bring the joy of bird watching to your home. Grab your binoculars, everyone. Melusine, Birds of Many Feathers is available now at your favorite bookstore and online. Autographed copies and exclusive offers are available at kiddlewinkspublishing.com. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Adventures of Toby Baxter, Book 2, River Home for the Holidays. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read written by Tim Wright. River Home for the Holidays delivers a captivating blend of humor, danger, and inspiration. For lovers of fantasy with mythical creatures, this book is a must-read, promising a thrilling and heartwarming adventure. Dive into the enchanting world of River Home alongside Toby Baxter, and you won't be disappointed. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, great middle grade novel. You want to add this to your family library. The Adventures of Toby Baxter, Book 2, River Home for the Holidays, written by Tim Wright. We have a guest returning to the podcast. She comes back to celebrate her brand new children's book. It's called Sing It Like Celia. Please welcome back Monica Mancillas. Hey, Monica, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me back.
I'm really excited to have you back. And first, can we talk about who Celia is, please, for the folks who don't know who Celia is?
Yes. So Celia refers to Celia Cruz, who is known as the Queen of Salsa. She's no longer with us, but she is was an amazing salsa singer, and you've probably heard her even if you didn't know you were listening to her. She's famous for saying azúcar.
Azúcar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means sugar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just completed back in November, I was on a tour of El Salvador with a group called Clowns Without Borders. And we performed throughout the entire country. And it seemed like everywhere we went, there was her music playing. To the point where we just added it into the show, and we were juggling and dancing to it, and it was an awful lot of fun. Her music is so much fun, and her voice is so iconic, and of course that azúcar is recognizable all throughout Latin America. So tell us about the story.
So the story follows a 12-year-old girl named Salvadora Sanchez, Salva for short. And it opens on the day that her mom has disappeared inexplicably from her life. And her mom was a single mother, raising her on her own. So now she's forced to live temporarily with, or indefinitely, with her father, who's a traveling investigative journalist. And so she winds up in his camper van as they travel to Northern California, to a fictitious town that is loosely based on a few different small mountain towns here in California that I know well. And it follows her as she basically has to find her new place in the world and figure out what happened to her mom. And, go through the emotional struggle that a lot of kids go through when they deal with some kind of family separation, whether it be from divorce or incarceration or deportation. There's this emotional turmoil that a kid has to go through. And at this particular age, she's also, of course, dealing with all the normal middle school struggles. So she befriends a group of kids at this campground that they're staying at who are locals. And they're all in a band together. And so she winds up joining the band when they discover that she has an amazing singing voice, and she introduces the band to salsa. And salsa is, Celia Cruz in particular, is her connection back to not only her roots and her heritage, but her mother, because her mother was really into salsa and Celia Cruz. And so she figuratively and literally finds her voice through the course of the book, and we discover what happened to her mom. And it deals with a lot of heavy themes while also keeping, I think, a lighthearted, age-appropriate middle grade tone.
I'm sure that there are some people out there listening thinking, 12 years old, why do we have to talk about deportation and incarceration and death and disappearance? Why can't 12-year-olds just be 12?
Yeah, well, they can be. And there are certainly lots of books that are lighthearted or, that take you into a fairy tale world and deal with dragons and unicorns and butterflies. And of course, those books are important and necessary. We need to have books that make us laugh. We need to have books that help us to escape. I have plenty of those. But we also need to provide literature for young people who are going through those struggles, because they are very real. For not just a small minority, but I think a very large population of children are dealing with these particular kinds of issues. This story is, while fictitious, it's largely inspired by my own childhood and my sister's childhood. I have a sister who's much younger than I am. She's 14 years old. And her mother disappeared when she was a young child under similar circumstances as Salva's mother. And so it was inspired by her story, and also the struggles that I went through as a young kid with my parents divorcing when I was 4 years old. And my dad and I didn't travel. He wasn't an investigative journalist. He was a neurobiologist, though he did he wrote op-eds and that sort of thing. But we did travel in a camper van in a very similar situation in Europe when he was doing his postdoctoral research over there.
Wow.
So it was based on real life experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we very early on in the history of the podcast, we celebrated a book that talked about a character whose father had been incarcerated, and we talked about some of the statistics. And this has been the podcast's been on for 6 years now, and I was shocked at the number of kids who has one or both parents incarcerated. It's a shockingly high number.
Yeah, especially in the United States. I mean, we have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. So I think it's something that largely goes, that we don't talk about. But it's a very real fact of life for a lot of kids in this country. Mm-hmm. And I remember visiting, going to the jail a handful of years ago and being a little bit, taken aback by how many young kids and family members were sitting in the waiting room. Mm-hmm. You imagine it as this other world that's very separate from the lives that we lead. And really, these are everyday, normal people living their lives just like the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Was it especially challenging writing this story since it is connected, has such a strong connection with you and your sister?
I don't know that it was, I would say that it was especially challenging. I think that what kept me motivated through writing it, even as, I had to touch upon, issues that were particularly painful for me from my childhood, is the fact that I was writing this for my sister and for kids like her. And having to see her go through her own personal struggles of, again, as kids, we mirror ourselves, especially when we're going through the middle grade years and high school years, we really mirror ourselves on our parents. Mm-hmm. And, so there's a lot of emotional turmoil that we're not really necessarily ready to deal with and understand until many, many years later. That I wanted to not only address, but to normalize in a way that that shows somebody like my sister who's going through this kind of thing, that there's a way through it. Mm-hmm. And that it can provide strength and that you can find hope in those circumstances.
So important. We talk a lot here on the podcast of the beauty of books being windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. Obviously, for somebody like your sister, having a book so that she could see herself positively reflected in the pages of a book is so important for her to see that there is a way out, a way through this difficult time. It's so very, very important. I also think it's just as important for kids who aren't necessarily living in that situation to have a chance to look through a window and to see into the lives of maybe some of their classmates or neighbors. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite things to do these days is to watch television shows. There's now, with all these streaming platforms, there are all these amazing television shows that are filmed and produced in other countries. And it's one of my favorite things to do is to watch something that was filmed in a country that I've never been to, like South Africa or Indonesia or someplace I've never been to and only ever seen in my imagination or through biased media representations. And to see not only a glimpse of what is a little bit different there, but what is like strikingly the same. It really brings home the fact that we are all human beings, and yes, we can celebrate and talk about our differences, but there are universalities. And so when I see those universals in a story, or I read those universals in a story, it puts me in that character's headspace, and I'm able to much more easily empathize by seeing that this character is a lot like me. So somebody reading about Salva may go, I'm in choir too. I love to sing too. I love salsa music. I love jazz. I love Taylor Swift. I love camping. I've been in that awkward situation where another kid has considered me a rival and said something mean to me. Mm-hmm. All of these things help children who haven't been through those experiences to connect emotionally and see that, oh, we're actually not that much different. It helps them to feel a sense of empathy and connection.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm like you. I love watching those series from different countries. There was this one series I watched on Netflix. It was set in Manaus, Brazil, a city in the middle of the Amazon. You can't get there by car. It's only accessible by boat or by airplane. There's 1 million people living there. It's fascinating. And when we started the podcast, I get these statistics of where the podcast is being downloaded to. I had a regular listener in Manaus. I felt so cool. I'm like, I've seen your city. This is cool.
That is very cool.
It is.
I love that.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about salsa music? My beautiful wife is originally from Puerto Rico. I've been introduced to it. It's like the only music I listen to these days is Latin music, either from Colombia or from Puerto Rico. I'm not a big fan of bachata. I have to be honest with you, but salsa it's amazing. It's hard to be sad if you're listening to a salsa song.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, where do I begin? I started listening to salsa when I was probably about Salva's age, about 12 or 13 years old. I had grown up listening. Started playing piano when I was 6 years old, and so I was classically trained. And then I started singing in choirs where I was introduced, in addition to classical music, to jazz music. My parents listened to all kinds of things. My mom was really into soul and R&B when I was a kid. My dad, I remember them taking me to rhythm and blues clubs and meeting Gatemouth Brown and, all these really cool blues musicians. And then, I started listening to Windham Hill, like new age music and all kinds of stuff. And then my dad took me to my first salsa concert, and it was here in Los Angeles. It was an outdoor free event. And I don't remember which came first. I know I went to two. One was Oscar de Leon and the other was Celia Cruz. I think Celia might have been the first. And when I tell you that it was like life-changing for me, I just remember being utterly blown away, not just by the music, but by watching people dance. I was like hooked. And I remember an older teen asking me to dance, and I was shy and embarrassed. I didn't know how to dance salsa music and to salsa music. So my dad that night, we went back home, and he had a friend who knew how to dance teach me the basics, the salsa basics. And for years after that, I wanted desperately to learn more. When I went to college, I would ask people, does anyone want to go to salsa class with me and learn how to dance? And nobody was ever brave enough to go. And so it was not until I was about, I don't know, in my mid-20s, I think, that I finally said, you know what? I'm just going to go by myself. Mm-hmm. And I started taking salsa dancing classes, and I was obsessed. I would go at least 3 times a week. I would dance for hours, and it was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. Being on the dance floor, it was just, like you said, it's like infectiously happy, energetic music, and it's dancing to salsa music is really all about connection and community. I mean, you would dance with strangers, but there was really this like connection and camaraderie because you loved the music so much. It was just the most amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. My wedding video, which was shot on old school VHS stuff, so I don't think we could watch it, but there is a hilarious scene. We had a salsa band playing, and so the camera just panned across, and it started on the side of the dance floor where most of my wife's family are, and they're doing their salsa, and it's so cool. And it pans over to my old Irish Catholic friends and family who are like doing, I don't know, drunken calisthenics. But they were having so much fun. It didn't look pretty, but it looked like they were having fun.
Yeah. It's that kind of music you just can't help but dance to. And then the more you learn, the better it is, the more fun it is.
One of the things that I've noticed, and I've talked about it here on the podcast, is when we attend salsa concerts, it's much more common to go in and see an intergenerational audience at a salsa show than it is to see, an intergenerational audience at a pop, unless it's the dads or the moms bringing their 12-year-olds to see Taylor. It's, but at salsa concerts, it's everybody. It's grandparents, it's kids, it's parents, it's teenagers. It's like teenagers and parents can get along at the same concert. It's really, and I think that's one of the reasons I've fallen in love with the genre.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to go dancing a lot, I would dance with young men and men in their 80s. I mean, one of the regulars that I would dance with was a man in his 80s, and he had just started to learn how to dance a few years prior. It really, like I said, it's really about community and personal connection more than anything else. And just the music. The music is so infectious.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, you mentioned your dad being a neurobiologist. I got to ask, what was that like growing up with a neurobiologist, and what exactly does a neurobiologist do?
Well, he studied the brain. And I mean, I remember going to his lab when I was a kid, and at the time he was studying lobsters. I remember setting some of them free, being little and saying, "Can I please set them free?" I went to the ocean and set them free. And he had horseshoe crabs, and he's actually working right now on a book about consciousness. So but my dad was always a force to be reckoned with when I was a kid. I mean, he was not just a neurobiologist. He was a professor for a while at UCLA, but he was also a political activist. He was very involved in the Latino community here in Los Angeles and in Mexico. And he wrote, as I said, he wrote op-eds for the Los Angeles Times and La Opinión in Mexico. And he even had his own segment on the news. I don't remember if it was Telemundo or Univision. It was one of the two, called Medicina en su casa, which medicine in your house. So he'd do this like 5 to 10 minute segment about, I don't remember what, as the expert. So he was very intelligent, ambitious, driven. It was great.
That's wonderful. I wonder if he talked about the benefits of Vaporub. That seems to be the the treatment my wife always goes to.
Yes.
I thought about you and your first book you talked about here on the show when I was down in El Salvador, How to Speak Spanglish, because that's what I was doing most of the time down in El Salvador. It was a wonderful experience. Not many people understood me. But they were wonderful. It didn't matter to them. They just kind of laughed at me, and we had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, not to generalize, but I think, Latina people in general are very kind and welcoming. And
that certainly has been my experience. Can we get a preview of what might be coming next from you, Monica?
Yeah. So I'm currently working on the finishing touches of a novel for Scholastic that was just announced, so I can talk about it, called Taco Tuesdays. It's going to be coming out next spring or summer, and it is a completely different genre. It's kind of a rom-com, enemies to lovers, set for middle grade audience and dual point of view about a girl named Dulce, whose family restaurant, which was kind of the legacy handed down by her great grandmother, that used to do it was a Michelin star restaurant and used to was famous for its upscale Mexican cuisine, is now being put out of business by Taco World, the chain that moved in across the street. And so they are trying to commercialize more, and she kind of sees this as a sellout move and is struggling with the restaurant taking over every part of her life. And then Julian, the love interest, has just moved to California from New York. He's a Brooklyn boy, skater boy, and his parents are separating. They were food bloggers, And the two of them literally crash into each other at the restaurant, and, sparks fly. And they are forced to share a summer camp cooking experience and kind of turn into each other's salvation through a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, you have an open invitation to come back to celebrate that book once it's out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would love to come back.
In the meantime, Monica, where can we go to find out more about Sing It Like? I suddenly stopped being able to speak English here. Where can we find out more about Sing It Like Celia and find out more about you?
You can go to monicamancillas.com, MonicaMancillas.com, and all of my books, including some others that I didn't talk about today, are listed on the website.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Sing It Like Celia, great middle grade novel from our guest, Monica Mancillas. Monica, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much.
Hey, are you ready to ignite a passion for reading in your students? Introducing bookandauthor.com, your gateway to literacy connections. With bookandauthor.com, connecting your school with talented authors of captivating kids' books has never been easier. Simply visit our user-friendly website and explore our extensive database of authors. Filter your search based on budget, genre, and availability. Discover the perfect match for your school and your students. But that's not all. With bookandauthor.com, you have the power to request a proposal. Let vetted authors come to you with their tailored ideas, ensuring an unforgettable literacy experience for your students. Don't wait any longer to inspire young minds through the magic of books. Visit bookandauthor.com today and open the door to a world of literacy connections. Bookandauthor.com, where literacy comes to life. This episode of the Reading With Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Junior Miles and the Junkman. Great middle grade novel written by Kevin Carey. Junior and his family live in a junkyard where his father creates pieces of art from the junk surrounding them. When Junior's father falls ill and dies, Junior and his mom are left with few resources other than what his mother brings home from her job as a waitress. The junkyard is threatened by encroaching development, and just when Junior thinks all is lost, he finds that a junk sculpture of a man gifted to him by his father begins to speak to him. The junk man provides advice in the form of enigmas. Are they clues, or is it just nonsense? Junior and his best friend Isaac embark on a journey to find out. Can a man made of junk parts teach Junior about art and friendship and overcoming the loss of a loved one? Only if Junior believes it can. This is a really wonderful middle grade novel. You and your kids would love it. Check it out today. Junior Miles and the Junkman by Kevin Carey. Right now we're going to take a listen back to an interview we had with Kate DiCamillo back in September of 2021. You can find the whole interview at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. We always talk about what kind of conversations families can have when they're reading a particular book together or co-reading a book together. The first thing that jumps out to me, Beatrice is able to read in a time and a place where it was against the law for girls to be able to read. And that exists today.
Yes, it does.
And I
yes,
think that's a really important and powerful conversation for families to have, I think.
I think so too, and I also think just this, on a very personal note, when you write a book, you never, or I don't, I'm never really certain exactly where the story is coming from or how it ties into me personally. But when I finished this and it went into galleys, and then I started to think about, okay, now I'm going to have to talk about where it came from. And one of the first things that popped into my head was I was super lucky in that I had a mom that read to me all the time and an older brother who would also read to me. But I was one of those kids who was just desperate to learn how to read for myself. And when I was growing up, they didn't teach you how to read in school until first grade. And so I went like trotting off to first grade, first day, thinking, oh boy, I'm going to come back and I'll know how to read. And of course, that was not correct. And even more than that, this thing that I wanted so much kind of like receded, the closer I got to it, because, the school system where I was then was teaching kids to read with phonics. And, for whatever reason, it did not, it just made no sense to me. It wouldn't click in my brain. And I remember coming home from school and collapsing in front of my mother and kind of weeping, because I was so desperate to learn to read and I didn't understand what they were talking about. And my mother, when she finally like got the scope of the problem, said, calm down, for the love of Pete. We'll work around it. That's what she said. And she also said, you're smart. You're good at memorizing. We'll just work around it. And she made me flashcards. So she wrote a word on each flashcard. And every day after school, I would come home and she would go through this huge stack. She would tell me what the word was. I would memorize it. We would do it again and again and again. And that's the way I learned to read. And, I didn't fully feel like myself until I could read. And once I could do it, I felt like anything was possible. And so that story of me learning to read, even though I didn't come from a time and place where it was against the law, it was this thing of I saw how much it empowered me, the written word. And everybody, that individual empowerment through being able to read and navigate the world through words and stories, I feel like everybody should have that,
Absolutely. And what a beautiful gift that your mom gave you, because there's so many other teachers and parents at that time who were probably doing the opposite and just saying, hey, you ain't going to do it. You ain't going to get it. Sorry. And those kids grew up in a very different way. So I'm really thankful that you had a mom that had that foresight and that love for you to do the workaround.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about it too, when I look back on it, is that it sends an implicit message too, which is, that I carried with me without even being aware of it, which is, okay, this way doesn't work. Try another way. And that is a great lesson for a kid to get, as opposed to, no, this is the only way that you're going to learn to read. And if you don't learn this way, you're not going to learn. And, you're right. A lot of parents would have said, oh, well, you'll get it. We'll work on phonics, right? That's what a lot of parents would do. But my mother was able to, and it was very much who she was, step off the beaten track and go, well, what's up? Let's just do it a different way.
Yeah.
And it was a really good lesson for me. But the thing too that, and you understand this and talk about it as much as I do, it's just that thing of being able to pick up a book and read it, can change your life, because nobody can tell you anymore. You can do it yourself. It is so empowering, and it's just something that I want everybody to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned how to read with phonics, and I first married my beautiful wife, who's a teacher, a special needs teacher. I was, you got to get that hooked on phonics thing, and everybody can learn phonics, so easy. And now I'm, coming out of my ignorance and learning that, we have 26 letters in the alphabet, but we have over 44, I think the word is phonemes or sounds that make up our English language. And there's not enough letters.
Right. And it's also that thing of, this is not me railing against phonics. I think phonics works great, but everybody's brain is different.
Right.
It's like, what's the way in? what works for you? How does your brain work? And so there's not a right way for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's how your brain works.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm loving the fact that we're coming to a point in our history where we're recognizing and really starting to recognize that people are different, and that's a good thing. That diversity is a wonderful thing. It adds to our culture. It adds to each other, and we need to make the effort to kind of change the way we teach, change the way we interact with each other to really help everybody become the person they're meant to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah. I totally agree.
So that's a great place for families to start. Just having that conversation about what a gift being able to read is, and how we still need to work hard to make sure reading and literacy is available to everybody around the world. And there's so many people that don't have a chance. Even here in the United States, there are people who aren't able to get the help they need to become literate. What are the kind of stories, conversations do you think families can have as they're reading the Beatrice Prophecy?
I think that you can also talk about the importance of friendship, and that there are people, no matter what terrible situation you might end up in, you can find somebody who you can trust. And this is like, I was talking to somebody the other day who had just finished reading the book and pointed out this thing to me, which happens quite a bit when I tell stories and I don't always see the thematic links from story to story. But she said to me, in every story that you write, adults are so fallible, but there's also always an adult that is absolutely trustworthy. And it's so good for kids to know that they can find those, because that was my experience as a kid. Mm-hmm. Was, I had neighbor, ladies who, 3 widows that lived on the opposite side of the street from us, three older ladies who really welcomed the neighborhood kids into their house and were interested in us and listened to us. And, what a wonderful thing it is to have your parents are spectacular. Mm-hmm. And it's also great to have another adult in your life that you know that you can trust and that you can figure out who you are with.
Hey, quick question. Are you raising a reader? Are you ready to embark on a journey of imagination and adventure with your family? Then look no further than Dear Fam, the ultimate destination for family reading fun. Join the Dear Fam movement and unlock your child's love for reading with Dear Fam, the reading journal tracking app. Develop critical thinking skills. Set up reading goals with your child as they earn reading badges. Get notified when your child shares their reading journals. Share with family, friends, and teachers. Start your family's next reading adventure today with Dear Fam. That's spelled DEARFAM, where reading together means bonding forever. Dear Fam, now available on the App Store and at Google Play. Dear Fam. Join us right now from the beautiful state of North Carolina. Our guest is here today to celebrate. Her picture book is called Arnie the Armadillo. Please welcome to the show, Eden Estabrook. Hey, Eden, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. It was a beautiful rainy day here in Boston, but it's March and it was in the 50s, so that's a win.
Well, there you go.
That's a win.
Can't beat that. I used to live in Michigan, and I know you always have to celebrate when that weather kind of hits past, not wanting to go outside. And mm-hmm. once that sun peeks out, you just gotta go.
Absolutely. Well, we just gotta go and find out who Arnie the Armadillo is.
Yeah, so Arnie the Armadillo, the full book title is called Arnie the Armadillo Goes to Antarctica, which I know is a bit of a mouthful, but it also kind of helps to hint at what the book is about. So kind of hearing the title, you might automatically sense a theme, and that would be Arnie, Armadillo, and Antarctica. All those words start with A, and Arnie is here to help I like to say engage children with new vocabulary. So, a little bit of background about myself. I studied English. I actually knew I wanted to be a writer, or in the writing profession since I was about 14, and pretty much everything I did then kind of pushed me in that direction. Albeit I kind of landed in, the marketing communications realm for a little while, but I always loved reading. I loved literacy, and a lot of that tied back to my experiences with the books that I read when I was younger. So with that, I wanted to kind of take that love of literacy and kind of find a way to engage children with vocabulary words at an age where they really can absorb it quite well. I did a little bit of research. NIH put out a study where they said that ages 3 to 5 is when children really do learn language very well. And a lot of people apply that to learning a second language, which is also great, but it also applies to learning English vocabulary. So that's where Arnie comes in. It is a story. It is not advertised as an educational book. If a child is engaging with it, they will see it solely as a book with a story inside and cute illustrations that help, carry them from A to B. But the illustrations also help, showcase some of the more complicated words that might be in the book to kind of help, introduce them to new vocabulary and provide a visual to also help them understand what some of those words mean. All while just seeming like they're reading a book.
Well, that's really great. Now, can you describe a little bit more, help me better understand that device that you're using, that you're talking about helping the kids see Antarctica is not a word that we see in many children's books.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my favorite example to use from the book is Arnie ascends in an airplane. So ascend is arguably a more complex word. I would say probably not something that you would naturally toss into a children's book, especially one ages 3 to 5. But within the context of the book, you're going to see Arnie in an airplane, and you're also going to see him going up. So what the goal is that, on the first read, are they fully going to understand, what Arnie is ascending in an airplane means he's going up? Possibly not, but a lot of kids read books multiple times. I've had all of my customers that I've been in touch with since, say, their kids have picked it up and read it, 3, 4, 5 times. And eventually they're going to start putting 2 and 2 together. So, Antarctica, for example, when that word is first brought into the book, the first thing you're going to see is the snow, the mountains, a lot of stuff that you would just attribute to Antarctica. Obviously, you can't put the whole continent on a page, but there's going to be some of those key pieces that are really going to help with that recall when a kid is engaging with some of those words. So even like the word Argyle, his friend Albert, who he's visiting in Antarctica, wears an Argyle sweater. That's a little lesser known word, but what they do know is a sweater. So if you look at the picture, you see that Albert's wearing a sweater and it has a diamond pattern. Therefore, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together that Argyle equals a pattern that's on the sweater.
And, it's, as you're saying that, I'm picturing myself back 30 something years ago when my kids were on my lap and reading. And I am guessing that instead of just coming out and saying, if he turns to me and said, what does ascend mean? Which I think a lot of high school kids might ask. What does Argyle mean? We'd sit down and we would have a conversation. Well, what do you think it means? What's going on the page? Which direction is Arnie going when we're saying ascend? Oh, going up. So ascend means goes up. And then suddenly we can start using that when we're on an escalator at the mall. We are ascending.
Yeah, and I think on my Instagram, I recently put out a post, and it showed one of my customers sitting with his mom on a rocking chair. And in the caption, it says, "Arnie the Armadillo best used on your parents' lap," because it really was designed for parents to be able to engage with their kids. And even when I do story times, it's not like I start reading the story and just go like bam, 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 bam. You go through it, you read it, you talk about it, it is A themed, and some of that A words aren't words that are written. Some of them are in the pictures. So like Arnie is painting. When he does art, he's painting an avocado. So that's something where you can kind of point and say, okay, what is he painting? Or, what is this? And there's that level of engagement that I really wanted, because that's what I grew up with. It's that it is being able to engage with the book with my parents, and for some of those things that maybe are a little less recognizable right off the bat, being able to have that dialogue with my parents to kind of process through the story. But I always like to put out the caveat that because of the way that the pictures are, we have a lot of kids, even if they can't read it, who just like to engage with the pictures. So it's been very multifaceted in its use.
I'm sure the kids love the alliteration, which is something I love.
It is. And my book is dedicated to Dr. Seuss. And I kind of, when I was writing it, I was trying to, as best as I could, replicate some of that rhythm that just comes like when you read out loud a Dr. Seuss book. I said, I just did a school visit a little while ago and I read Green Eggs and Ham along with Arnie. And like, you just read it and you can just feel like, as you're reading it, just the rhythm of how the words come out together. That's what I was kind of trying my absolute hardest to replicate. Now, I am not Dr. Seuss, and I never will be. That's why I bring his books with me to story times. But that was kind of the inspiration behind the alliteration, was not just the vocabulary aspect, but also making it easy to read and hopefully kind of having some of that rhythm as you're going through the pages.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to get kids involved. Kids love the rhythm. I think it helps them anticipate what's going to happen next. It helps them remember what's happening in the story. So the fourth, the fifth, the sixth time, the kids can get involved and get those very first senses of how to read. I'm imagining there might be some teachers out there, some veteran children's authors who are saying, no, you got to check the guide to see which words you use for 3 to 5 year olds. You seem to have broken that rule and are introducing some words that we don't see. What would you say to those folks who are like, no, 3, 5 year olds are not ready to learn what ascend is in Antarctica? No, it's completely too early.
I mean, I would challenge them on that mindset. I mean, I really do think children are, I won't say smarter than we think, and I say that in like the nicest way possible, but they are fully capable of learning more complex concepts, including vocabulary. And I always like to kind of tie it back to, that recommendation from, children's education authorities on like teach your kids a second language when they're young. Absolutely do that. And the reason they're saying is because their brains are meant to absorb that information best at that age. And the same thing applies to English. You're going to remember it, or even if they don't remember it right in that moment, it will stick with them as they grow older, and they'll remember and they'll recall back, oh yeah. If they hear the word ascend in conversation, they might remember Arnie ascending in an airplane, and it might make sense in that moment versus the moment where they sit down and actually read it. Yeah. So I would challenge them on it. I know from the feedback that I've gotten from my readers, they said a lot of their kids like reading it because it provides a little bit of level of challenge. And I think it has proven so far that not only can they comprehend it, but they really enjoy the engagement that comes with more complex words. And at the very end, there's actually a gallery of pictures and definitions for those words that they encounter along the way. And a lot of the older readers like to go back and, see like, oh, this was an armadillo. What's the definition of an armadillo? And then kind of going back and being able to pick out all the different A words that were not just in the words itself, but also in the illustrations.
Yeah. You and I were talking before we started recording, and you said you were in the marketing and the PR business. Kids are being exposed to words that they're not supposed to be able to use all the time in advertising and in the adult shows that they watch, because every kid does sit down and at least hears, programs that their parents are watching, or they hear the news on the radio on the way to school or whatever. So, especially if you're encouraging your book to be read with a parent, somebody there who can help them through that. I don't know what that word is. Okay, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And transparently, I learned that there are some words that even the adults didn't know. I put the word axolotl in there. Now, not the word itself. There's just an axolotl in the background of one of the illustrations, but I put the word in the gallery in the back, and I had quite a few parents go, what on earth is this thing?
Well, I'd be one of them. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Oh my goodness! Well, you need a copy of Arnie the Armadillo then. The definition is in the back of the book.
Okay, it's gonna keep me. There is the marketing genius behind this. I'm definitely gonna have to get a copy and find out.
Yes, you should.
So you were mentioning again to me, that you didn't have a chance to write children's books because you were busy in PR and writing press releases and copy for ads and things like that. I actually think that that's a pretty good training ground for a writer because you don't get to sit down and work. Most picture books take 2 years to come to life at least. And you don't get that when you're putting together a press release. You might have an hour.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
You're not working on one project for 2 years. You're working on 10 projects in a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been a professional writer, I said within marketing communications for 7 years now. And so that included things like, press releases or even like editorial that went into magazines and technical white papers. I work in the manufacturing industry, so everything that I do is very technical. And I do think that's really helped a lot when it comes to the post publication activities. But I do think what it does, and what that background in writing can help with is kind of the creation of a story itself. Like even as I've been kind of toying with, with writing a book for the letter B, you kind of have to figure out, okay, well, if Arnie is going to get somewhere, like how is he going to get somewhere? You can't just all of a sudden pick him up and toss him somewhere. Although I don't know, maybe you can. But finding the kind of the logic behind the story and why this character is where he is, and trying to make it all make sense. Because if there's one thing I have learned in my more limited experience with children is that they do ask a lot of questions, and if there's a gap in the plot, they're going to ask. So that part has been thoroughly entertaining, but I think also helpful when even as I've been thinking through my second book is like, what have they pointed out in Arnie where it's like, why is he there? Well, he's visiting a friend.
So is the plan to create 26 books for every letter in the alphabet?
That would be like the dream goal. Right now I'm trying to start small and dream towards A, B, and C so we can at least have a trilogy. I would love to make it all the way. I have grand ideas for the letters Q and X, but those are a little bit farther down. So, the hope is, that I can at least do A, B, and C. The way I looked at it is with A, as you kind of mentioned, this is a little bit more of a different concept. I am kind of toying with more complex vocabulary in books that are younger, for a younger age. And I went into it with, I did a focus group before I published where I did consult with teachers and educators as well as parents on, kind of the concept and how they felt that might engage with their kids. And while it was all positive, ultimately the free market speaks. And so what I wanted to do before I kind of went into B was make sure that A was understood and worked as I hoped, when actually, selling and with, children using it. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
All right, well, that's a good place to be. I think people would want to know where they can go to find out more about Arnie the Armadillo and find out more about all those grand plans. I can't wait for Q and X.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, Arnie's Hub is on Instagram, so at Arnie the Armadillo. Everything that I do, every update is put there. So I always tell people, follow me there, and that's where you'll see, if you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, you can see when I pop up at different locations. You can see what indie bookstores I'm in. And if you're not, then there's also a link to purchase off of Amazon. Or as well as a few other, I think, online outlets where you can purchase as an out-of-town, individual. So, Instagram at Arnie the Armadillo is the place to be for all your armadillo news.
Awesome. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author of Arnie the Armadillo. Our guest has been Eden Estabrook. Hey, Eden, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. And of course, we would love for you to check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, you can visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, download our free online magazine, visit our Reading With Your Kids Certified Great Read Wall of Fame, and use the contact button up at the top of the page to send us a message. And you can also find a link to every episode of the show, almost 2,000 episodes of the show at readingwithyourkids.com. And if you are an author, please be sure to click the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how you can be a guest here on Reading With Your Kids. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of Kidlit fans about your great kids' books. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our amazing guests and sponsors. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Skylar Strauss, Nick Warner, Kyoko Ito, Kaylin Newland, Kristen Barrett, Sydney Swan, Hannah Rose. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.